Almighty God, we humbly beseech Thee to vouchsafe Thy blessing upon this council, direct and prosper our deliberations to the advancement of Thy glory and the true welfare of the people of the Regional Council and Australia. Amen.
Amen.
So, I'd now like to declare the meeting formally open. And first item on the agenda is apologies and leave of absence. We have one apology from Councillor Inglis, who is not able to be with us this evening on health reasons. So we have a mover, Councillor Betts and Councillor Maxwell. Thank you. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Item 2, community consultation. We have no community consultation this evening. Takes us to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Do we have any matters of interest from those minutes?
We need to move for a second, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, moved Councillor Webb and Councillor Maxwell. Do we have any matters arising from those minutes? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. Item 4, disclosures of interest. Councillor MP.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Item 9.7, I forgot what the other one. Yes, item 8.3. Not both non-pecuniary, non-financial. In the case of 8.3, a work colleague not employed by the same workplace is employed through the University of Southern Queensland. Have known that particular person for some time, and she plays a role in the CRC One Basin proposal. And in the case of 9.7, as a past Vice President of the Friends of the Marsupial Park and an active member over the last 11 years. And I'd like to remain in the chamber for both, if I may, please.
Thank you. Any other registrations of interest? If not, we will move through items 5 and item 6. There is no mayoral minute, no notice of motion. That brings us to item 7.1. Move Councillor Rodder and Councillor Webb. Thank you. Councillor Rodder, do you wish to speak to your motion?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Any councillors wish to make comment? Councillor Wilson.
Mr. Mayor, it's essentially a matter arising, I think, but this is the second incident we've had in terms of old fuel storage containers leaking and causing havoc with the small community. Durais, obviously, and Woolman's the other. And I'm really concerned that they're not the last two. And there are so many areas in our region with potential for having major disasters happen in their community. One of the ones that concern me most when I think about small communities is Bendivier, to be honest, but for two reasons. One is because it was a fuelling depot for trucks on the way through, and there were two very active service stations there. And the other is it's near the McDonald River, that just where the service station was above the McDonald River. I'm not trying to say that in Bendivier we're going to have this issue. I'm just using it as an example. I would like to ask the question, is there any way that we can, first of all, identify where they are, because I know there are several in Peel Street, to be honest, and around the CBD, but perhaps if we could highlight or prioritise some, or just, is there a mechanism for monitoring? So I'm just asking for advice here, but I really think we need not to sit and wait for the next one to happen, but at least be aware of where we would be most concerned.
Councillor Betts is...
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This afternoon, Councillor Wilson, we had a workshop that
Yes, I know that.
did exactly that. It's going to allow us to identify the potential sites right across the Tamworth area and across the ROC.
Thank you. Any other comments, councillors? If not, I'll put that motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Motion is carried. Item 8.1. Move Councillor Rodder and Councillor Empey. Thank you. Councillor Rodder, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, that it's good that we are able to provide this assistance for BMX club. They're vibrant local club, and anything that we can do to obviously alleviate their issues that they currently suffer is a good thing. So I fully support this recommendation.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Any councillors wish to make comment? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. Item 8.2. Councillor Maxwell and Councillor Wilson. Councillor Maxwell, do you wish to speak to your motion? Any councillors wish to speak against? Any councillors wish to make comment? Councillor Impey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really interested in this water night on the Thursday, the 22nd of October, 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. I really think that's a really good idea. I think broadly speaking, as a community, we are aware of water management and conserving as much water as we possibly can, and certainly as a council we are. So I think the benefit of such a water night, if it's widely taken up, will certainly enhance and further spread the message that conservation of water is an important matter. It's something we need to take seriously. I look forward to seeing that through and following up how that runs.
Thank you. Any further comment, councillors? Councillor Wilson.
Mr Mayor, the messaging that's coming back is reinforcing the fact that we're aware of that council has had a really consistent message going out about water and the need to conserve water. And it's not only been consistent, it's been progressive. So as the situation's changed, it's progressed in a really cohesive and predictable way that's been able to be readily consumed by the residents, and I really thank the staff for that. We've not ebbed and flowed and had a great burst on promotions of what we need to do to be accountable, but it's been consistent, it's been up to date, it's been on task, and we've just got a lot to thank for the integrity of the staff and the planning of the staff with this area. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Motion is carried. Item 8.3. Councillor Webb and Councillor Betts, thank you. Councillor Webb, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Pretty self-explanatory, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Any councillors wish to make comment? Councillor Impey.
Was frozen, now it's working again. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Again, I'm looking forward to seeing how this all progresses. Obviously, we don't know which CRC will get a Guernsey. Indeed, both CRCs might be successful with their applications for grants and so forth under the Commonwealth funding stream. Interesting to note that the New South Wales government through DPI are one of the major supporters of the One Basin particular model, and also interestingly, both models are supported by multiple universities. And I think therein lies one of the opportunities we do have in our region, in the sense that we will have a university here at some stage in the future, and research grants and research opportunities and the opportunity to really progress some of the really important matters that exist across communities, and in this case water. I'd love to see us, if the opportunity arises, to be a special case model or a special activation centre, if you like, for some of the research that is undertaken by potentially either CRC, if possible. But I think being a large centre, and it's well documented some of the water issues we have had in the recent past, and pretty much dotted all the way through our history, really. I'd love to see, for that reason, an opportunity for this centre and this region to be a bit of a case model, if possible.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Tickle?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I certainly support this. It fits in very well with what we're doing, and that's to improve water security for our communities. It's quite fitting actually that we do invest in this, and the organisation, they have investments in new technologies which actually assists in water recycling in a safe and reliable way. And also assists communities with their planning, and as you know, we're doing water sensitive design planning, and they assist in that process for sustainability in planning processes, particularly with water, parks and trees. So I think it's more than fitting and appropriate that we do support this.
Thank you. Councillor Webb.
I'll close the debate, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just wanted to finish off by saying, from what I can understand, it really will still go ahead whether we put money in or not. And the amount of influence we'll have on that committee is yet to be seen. But I think the important thing for the community to know is that by us contributing to this amount of money, we will have the opportunity to be at the table, and we will have the opportunity to have our input. If we're not at the table and we can't have our input, then we can't challenge what's been decided by this CRC into the future. The other thing from that is that I think we probably stand to learn quite a bit from those others that will be involved. So I think paying the money, being a part of the group, is very important for us in our future.
Thank you. Councillors, I'll now put that motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Motion is carried. So brings us to 9.1. Moved Councillor Wilson and seconded Councillor Tickle. Thank you. Councillor Wilson, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, there's three notices of motions here. I'll speak on two of them very briefly. The ones that I've raised, the one is the Medicare one, Medicare provider number. And I'll break it down very, it's been documented well, so the reading's there, but all practitioners in Australia need a Medicare provider number, which is issued by the Australian government. And specialists can only practice, overseas trained specialists can only practice in an area of need, and within the first 10 years of their arrival in Australia. That's regardless if they've been Australian qualified and if they've been naturalised even. And still within that 10-year bracket, they can only practice within areas of need. The issue that I see is how the area of need is identified. And the area of need, according to the federal government, goes on postcodes. So if we take the example which is listed on ophthalmologists in Tamworth, the area of need they service, according to this criteria, is 2340. That doesn't include Attunga, Barraba, Nundle and all those other things. But in actual fact, our ophthalmologists service up to the Queensland border, and they estimate about 220,000 patients they actually service. And the issue is that we only have two, and there is a practitioner. This is just one example, which can be a microcosm of what happens throughout the state. There is one practitioner who wants to practice here. He doesn't fit outside the 10 years. He's overseas trained, and despite him being keen to relocate in Tamworth and to practice here and to service the hospital, he's not able to. And what I'm saying is the criteria that's used to identify areas of need fits well with metropolitan areas, but in regional areas it doesn't. It doesn't represent the true picture of how many people are being serviced. And this is not about our particular example, but it's certainly a good one. It's about fixing the issue for all regional areas throughout the state. The second one for Commission of Water. Mr. Mayor, who can fix water? To be honest, what strategy do we use? Water is an essential service. It's a commercial commodity. There are many stakeholders, of which we're one. There's landowners, there's high security, low security, there are mines, there are people who deal in water, there are environmental claims. But overriding all of this is the politics of it. And commissions and commissioners are outside politics, essentially. How well this will work, I don't know, but I certainly think that it's possible that to have a commissioner that's non-political and is not a stakeholder could be a benefit to the situation.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Any councillors wish to make comment? Councillor Webb?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, just on that third one, that water commission, independent water commissioner, I think we do need to see the reinstatement of that, and as long as they can get a commission put together that is workable, a group of people with some, that's the important part. Getting the commission in place is one thing, getting the right people in place is the second thing. We do have a floodplain management group, which is floodplain catchment at the moment, that's working very well in the state. And if you've got a similar group of people to that, in a group like this, it'd be fantastic. But if we got the wrong people on this, we'd be in trouble. So we need to, I'm very supportive of it, but I think whoever delivers that conference needs to talk about the makeup of it being of those people that would have a significantly positive impact for regional New South Wales.
Thank you. Councillor Impey?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I was kind of meant to send an email about this earlier, and I thought I might mention this in case it's too late at the end of the meeting, but in terms of the Medicare provider number motion, the Commonwealth Department of Health is developing the National Medicare or Medical Workforce Strategy in collaboration with the Medical Workforce Reform Advisory Committee. I just wondered whether there are any rural type peak bodies on that committee, such as the Rural Doctors Network. I would imagine if the Rural Doctors Network are on there, it might stand a chance of being considered if it's controlled by committee members who are from peak bodies that are city-centric. I'm not sure how it might go.
Thank you. Any further comments, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. Item 9.2, move Councillor Betts and Councillor Impey, thank you. Councillor Betts, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yeah, Mr.
Any councillors wish to speak against? Any councillors wish to make comment? No, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. Item 9.3, move Councillor Wilson and Councillor Webb, thank you. Councillor Wilson, do you wish to speak to your motion? Any councillors wish to speak against? Any councillors wish to make comment? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just in relation to in the next year's 3.5, the Club Grants Committee, External Board Committee, I am on that, and I feel that I should, to be fair to it, it's difficult for me to attend. It's often at 10:30 or 11 a.m. During work time, and it's difficult for me to attend, extricate myself from work and attend. So I'd be probably keen to withdraw to ensure that whoever replaces me could, potentially, make recommendations.
Okay, thanks Councillor Rodder. Are there any councillors wish to crack at that? If nobody else chooses to, I could possibly.
Club
Yes.
grants. Club grants.
Yeah. Oh, you can go.
Oh, well, Councillor Betts, yep.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Okay, thank you. Any other nominations? All supporting Councillor Betts, thank you. Any other comments, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. Item 9.4.
Move it.
With Councillor Webb, thank you, and seconded Councillor Impey. Do you wish to speak to your motion, Councillor Webb?
No, Mr Mayor.
Any councillors wish to speak against? Any councillors wish to make comment? Not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. Item 9.5. Move Councillor Wilson and Councillor Tickle, thank you. Councillor Wilson, do you wish to speak to your motion?
No, Mr Mayor.
Any councillors wish to speak against? Any councillors wish to make comment? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. Item 9.6. Move councillor Betts and councillor Impey, thank you. Councillor Betts, do you wish to speak to the motion? Any councillors wish to speak against? Any councillors wish to make comment? Motion, those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried. Item 9.7. Move councillor Wilson and councillor Tickle. Councillor Wilson, do you wish to speak to your motion?
It was councillor Tickle.
Oh, councillor Tickle, beg your pardon.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. It's actually with a lot of sadness actually that I have moved this motion, particularly the disbanding of the Friends of the Marsupial Park Committee. This has been a group of volunteers. This committee was formed back in 2009, 11 years ago, and they completely transformed the park. With those of us, which is most of us in the room that lived here, know that that park had gone to rack and ruin under council management and not under a lot of the current managers, I will have to say. But nonetheless, it was a mess. When I first moved to Tamworth 30 odd years ago, it was a facility where you were proud to take people and everyone enjoyed. And then for some reason it was allowed to fall into rack and ruin to the point that you couldn't take anyone there. It was unsafe. There was safety tape all around it. Unfortunately, dedicated volunteers got together and built that park to what we see today. And council has funded some aspects of it, but in the main, the park has been transformed thanks to the volunteers and the community, the business and the wider community. Business have been very generous over the years in donating materials and money, and the public, the everyday mums and dads, have donated money. They have donated time. It has been a showpiece. It has won awards. It is one of the most visited attractions in Tamworth. It attracts overseas visitors. What I would like to see and to have guaranteed is that the park does not fall into the state of disrepair. In fact, that it doesn't go backwards at all, because it is something we've been proud of. And we have a lot, as a council, we do have a lot to thank those volunteers for. Councillor Impey, before he came on council, led the team that established the Adventure Playground, another project that was largely funded by the community and business. And council did make a generous contribution as well, in particular for the soft ball. So as I said, it's with a lot of regret that I find myself standing here passing this motion, knowing the dedication that those volunteers have put into it, and the fact that it's got to this point that we're disbanding. It's okay to say we'll find more volunteers, but this team has been special and they have created what we see there today. So as a council, I hope that the volunteers are going to be appropriately thanked and involving others, not some little thank you note. I mean, they deserve a real big send-off to thank them for their efforts. That's part one. The other parts I support as well, and great to see that there's been money spent around in the smaller towns and villages.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to speak against the motion? Any councillors wish to make comment? Councillor Wu?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I have a long connection with it, but only for the reason that probably 45 years ago I brought one of the first kangaroos up there that I saved. But Mr Mayor, I think it's very sad too, and I think the volunteers that we've seen up there for the last 11 years have been absolutely outstanding. And for their own mental health and their own physical well-being, they've worked very hard up there, and there's a lot of camaraderie. And I think it's going to be a great loss to two groups of people. One is the wider community, and the other one is to the volunteers that were up there. So I think it's very sad that they're going. I think they're a great bunch of people, and to see them have to leave the way they've done is very sad. And I'd actually like to know. I won't say what I was going to say. I'd like to know what caused all this. This is a lot of. I mean, this shouldn't be happening in the world we live in. These guys have been up there for 11 years. All of a sudden, we find there's some issues that have come up that have caused them to do what they're doing, and I'd like to know what it is.
Through you, Mr Mayor, look, Mr. Riss may be a better place to answer this, but I'm going to give it a crack. It's fair to say that the rules around running these sorts of parks and the way the animals are managed and so on have become extremely complex. There's lots of rules and regulations around it, one of it requiring you've got to have permanent staff up there to obviously make sure all the necessary procedures and so on are followed. We received advice that unless we change the operation of the park, then the animals would basically be removed. So there wasn't much point having a marsupial park with no marsupials. And the required management changes obviously meant that the volunteers also had to change the way that they operated at the park to comply with those guidelines that are given by Department of Primary Industries and National Parks and Wildlife. And at the end of the day, there was just not a meeting of minds. The volunteers wanted to continue to run the park the way they always have, very successfully and to the benefit of the community. But the reality is, to comply with the rules and regulations, things had to change. And unfortunately, they made the decision that that wasn't aligned with what they wanted to do, and that's how we've reached this particular point.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson?
Mr Mayor, what makes these particular volunteers unique is that their overt enthusiasm and ownership of the task. And they weren't just fulfilling a role, as many volunteers that we pay to do. They actually created the role, that they created the space, and we owe them a lot. I acknowledge, and I think they acknowledge, the changes were forced on us and they had to take place. It's often how things take place and how things are progressed that makes the difference. And maybe we can learn from that. However, they're very unique, and I take Councillor Webb's point. They are actually hurting because they feel that somehow they've been disenfranchised alongside the issues that they acknowledged had to be dealt with. And I think we need to learn from that too, which I'm sure we will. But like Councillor Tickle said, we need to ensure that they're thanked in a fairly unique way, just as they've provided a new unique facility for us, because they've done something that's really put us at the top of the tree in far as these parks, and has been widely acknowledged in all sorts of tourism areas. This is a place you need to go, and that's singularly because of the enthusiasm and vision that the volunteers had. Most people like to jump on a successful wagon. They jumped on a sinking wagon and made it successful, and we owe them much.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Betts?
Yeah, just very quickly, Mr Mayor, I agree with the sentiments of my fellow councillors, and I'd just like to pay my comments and appreciation for what that group has done, because they really have put Tamworth on the map in more ways than one, and just sincere appreciation from myself and anyone else that has had anything to do with it. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Rippey?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I feel like in some ways, and I don't mean to sound morbid when I say this, but I feel like I'm witnessing the passing of a wonderful and a gifted volunteer group. But they have left us a legacy. It's a very positive legacy. It's a legacy that will last a long, long time. And as has already been mentioned by my fellow councillors, particularly Councillor Tickle and Councillor Wilson, we don't want to see the park return to what it was pre-2009. They were dark days indeed. The Friends of the Marsupial Park were made up of a number of volunteers, a core group of about a dozen throughout their entire 11 years. I was very fortunate to be one of them for the best part of those 11 years. In recent times, I've had to give away my vice presidency, simply because I'm not there as often as I'd like to be, but there are other things that keep me busy these days. They were known as parkies. I used to look forward to receiving emails on a regular basis from various members of the committee, and they would always refer to us as parkies. It made me feel very special. And when you're a volunteer in a community group, you do have that feeling of feeling special. and it is very unique to being part of a community group. A group of people who see volunteerism as being one of the most important parts of their lives. In fact, when I first started as a parkie in 2009, October 2009, I was at a particular stage in my life where things weren't too flash. I was about to go through a divorce, and I was about to go through some other hurtful moments, but it was what kept me afloat. And it's kept me afloat with a few other things in more recent times. But during that period from about 2009 all the way through to just shortly after the playground was built. And I think as a member of a group like that, it does more for a person and an individual and the fabric of a community than just being known as a member of a volunteer group. We need to make sure we are aware of that. Volunteers are essential people, they're important people, and they are not staff members. So you can't tell them what to do as such, because they'll pack up their bags and they'll walk home. And that's essentially what's happened in this space. The General Manager is correct. We had two cultures colliding. The members of the Marsupial Park, or friends of the Marsupial Park, or parkies, evolved over that 11 years, particularly the first 8 or 9 years, and they got things done. And then in some cases apologised after, but it got things done. During that time, Council was very supportive. We can't deny that. We can't forget the support that Council has provided the park over the years, particularly over the last 8 years. The first 3 years or so were a little bit more challenging. So with the legacy that the Friends have left us, a new batch of volunteers will be attracted to the park, and they'll create their own new culture, a culture that is different to what we've had before in the past, and a culture that will build and will help ensure that the park doesn't return to what it was 2009 and pre-2009. So I guess on behalf of the Friends of the Marsupial Park, our parkies, fellow members, thank you to the community for looking after us. Thank you to the business sector for making things possible. You only had to put a word out there and you would have businesses come from far and wide wanting to help and support and put money towards something, resources and materials towards other things. Just about everything up there happened on the smell of an oily rag. And last but not least, I just want to share one short story of an incident that happened that probably wouldn't be allowed to happen today. The President and I, John McDermott, were mixing around about 1.5 cubic metres of concrete by hand to lay a slab, to then put a new little seating area, which was a seating area originally in the original playground. We concreted that in, and it took us about 2 days. Now that seating area is still there. It's just at the top of the path leading up past the kangaroo enclosure. And I dare say if we tried to do that the way we did it back then, it probably wouldn't be allowed. And therein lies some of the challenges that they faced in the last 18 months. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr Resch would like to
Just through you, Mr Mayor, I'll just point out that Mr Kelly is the manager of our Sport and Rec department, and his staff did have many meetings with the Friends to try and resolve these issues. We, as the General Manager pointed out, we did get an audit by the DPI, and they gave us instruction. They weren't requests, they were instruction on what we had to do at the park, including having a trained staff member on site to control the activities happening on the park. And we didn't disband this group, they chose to be disbanded. We tried to resolve these issues, so just point that out.
Thank you. Any further comments, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. And item 10.1.
Move it, Mr Mayor.
Moved Councillor Webb and seconded Councillor Tickle. Thank you. Councillor Webb, do you wish to speak to your motion? Any councillors wish to speak against? Any councillors wish to make comment? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The motion is carried. And before I call for a motion to consider items 11, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, it should be considered in closed council. I make an offer to any of those members of the public or any of those members of the council, if they wish to have any of those matters brought to open council. If not, I would like to thank those members of the media and for their interest and attention, and invite them to leave the chamber whilst we consider these matters in